People are not taking this tariff thing seriously. I just came from the bank, and the teller that was looking after me, she told me that her husband lost his job yesterday. She said 15 of them were released from their job. They work in a steel plant a little outside of London here in a small town called Elma.
So we're already losing jobs to the Trump tariff threats. Some industries may be affected more than others, like the steel industry in Canada. There's already been some layoffs for that industry, which is kind of shocking considering a lot of these tariffs haven't really fully kicked in yet. But even the threat of these tariffs sometimes is enough to get countries and companies shaking. In fact, we've also lost a lot of companies in Canada since then as well, and it may get worse over the next few months.
One thing to bring back to the tariffs, how this is going to hurt Canada concretely. So Canada, we have a population of 41 million. Out of 41 million, we have a workforce of 20.7 million people. Our current unemployment rate, by the way, which is insane to consider, is 6.8%. That is super high. That is no good. All right, so we're not doing good already. The tariffs could cause 1 to 2 million job loss, increasing further 3+ million if the tariffs increase to 50%. Let's go into something that we despise, you and I. 1 in 4 workers work for the government in Canada. So that means the private sector, the private workforce, is only 15 million people. If we take away 2 to 3 million private sector jobs from a 15 million base, we're talking a 20% private sector disappearing, gone overnight. That is catastrophic.
Think how scary that is. 1 in 4 people work for the Canadian government in some capacity in Canada. So their jobs will likely be protected. We're not going to have a similar situation in the United States where they had Doge going through and actually finding which government sectors to actually lay off. It's going to be the opposite. Here in Canada, we just have companies saying, all right, bye, private sector. Yeah, we don't like our money being here. We don't like our money in this country. See ya. Peace out. And then they leave, and then all of a sudden you have a massive unemployment problem in Canada, which we already do. 6.8% unemployment. That's like recession territory. That's really bad.
Hello. I just wanted to share this information, mostly for Canadians. People are not taking this tariff thing seriously. I just came from the bank, and the teller that was looking after me, she told me that her husband lost his job yesterday. She said 15 of them were released from their job. They work in a steel plant a little outside of London here in a small town called Elma. So she said, husband lost his job already. I said, already? Yes. So this is just the beginning. So people, when I start making noise about the tariffs, people are not taking me serious. But this is a serious thing. My son-in-law works in the car industry. My husband works in the alcohol industry. So, good thing I work in healthcare. My job is needed. But people are going to lose jobs. It's going to get terrible. Anyway, I'm heading out this weekend. Nobody asked me when, where, and where. So I'm going to take a little break. And when I come back, then the pressure will start.
And again, this is going to affect more of the private sector more than anything else. A lot of government jobs will be safe from these tariff threats, which is really horrible because all that really means is the government is going to grow in power as opposed to the private sector. CBC article here says Quebec companies announce layoffs ahead of Trump tariffs. SheerTech's South Shore Furniture among major manufacturers to announce cuts blaming tariff threat. Quebec manufacturers are announcing layoffs, saying U.S. President Donald Trump's repeated threats of tariffs, now expected to come into effect in a month, are already affecting sales. The U.S. is Quebec's top trading partner, with most manufacturers in the province trading and selling to the American companies and consumers. Montreal-based tights manufacturer SheerTech, now a publicly traded company, announced on LinkedIn Wednesday morning it would be temporarily laying off 40% of its 350 employees in preparation for the tariffs. And also, to name another company that just announced this recently, GameStop is also going to be closing its operations in Canada. That's a store that I'd probably go to at least once a month. I love their $5 Friday deals. Now I'm not going to get those $5 Friday deals. And a lot of these are due to the fact that companies are just not profitable in Canada, and we're also getting massive tariff threats.
Trump is claiming that he may put a 50 or 100% tariff on Canadian vehicles coming into the United States. And I want to talk briefly about how detrimental and unreasonable that would be to not only the Canadian economy, but also the US economy. 80 to 85% of the vehicles that are manufactured in Canada get exported to the United States. We are the largest supplier of vehicles to the US, about $45 billion worth in 2023. Donald Trump is claiming that Canada stole the US auto industry, which is just completely false. In Canada, Ford Motor Company, GM, Stellantis, Honda, and Toyota all manufacture vehicles in Canada. Ford started manufacturing in 1904 in Walkerville, Ontario. General Motors started manufacturing in 1918. Stellantis started manufacturing cars in the 1920s. Honda started manufacturing cars in 1986. And Toyota started in 1964. So we didn't steal the auto industry from the United States. We have been manufacturing vehicles for over 100 years for the United States. In Canada, there's about 125,000 workers directly tied to the auto industry. And in the United States, that number is about 600,000 workers that are directly tied to the Canadian auto industry.
Think of how many workers that is, and imagine all those jobs disappearing, which could be a reality in the next few months. Global News says Canada's sugar candy industry could be hit hard by tariffs, experts say. Now they're even coming after our sweets. Canadian sugar and confectionery companies would be hit particularly hard if the US tariffs come into play because most of the industry's sales go south of the border. And we do know the Americans love to eat some sweet food, that's for sure. Sugar and confectionery does stand out as one of those sectors, especially in the short term, that is very reliant on the US and therefore could see big impacts from US tariffs, said Farm Credit Canada's senior economist Amanda Norris. The industry is one of Canada's most vulnerable agri-food sectors because more than 80% of its sales are to the US. And there is still a lot of manufacturing done here in Canada. Obviously, we've probably lost a substantial amount of manufacturing jobs over the last 2 decades, but there is a lot of cities that rely on manufacturing jobs. And this next video is interesting because it breaks down the cities that would be affected the most by these tariffs if these tariffs hit.
If you wondered what cities will be hit hardest as the tariffs come in, it's called the Tariff Exposure Index. Number 1 being St. John's, New Brunswick, Calgary, and Windsor. Let me explain. St. John's, New Brunswick, because they export energy to the United States. Calgary, because they also export energy and beef to the United States. And Windsor is the corridor for all the auto parts that are coming in for Guelph, St. Thomas, Cambridge, London area. So you've seen a couple of the factories close down just yesterday with GM laying off 79 people. And so the house of cards is now tumbling. If you don't think the tariffs are real and they're impactful, you're dead wrong, because they are going to decimate our economy. Look at these index numbers: 131% exposure, 81% exposure, and 61% exposure, respectively. It's time to rethink our leadership in this government, because they're doing nothing about it. And Canada needs something done immediately.
Yeah, that is brutal to see some of these numbers. And I, unfortunately, live in Calgary, so I'm in the place of the second most exposure to the Trump tariff threats, which is really bad because obviously the beef and the energy that is being exported down to the United States from Canada from that particular province. This is brutal, guys. Let me know your thoughts about it down below in the video's comment section, because it's definitely one that's going to be affecting a lot of people here in Canada. And even if you're watching from the United States, this is something that's going to be affecting both parties as well. Anyways, hope you enjoyed, learned something today, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.